I'd been running for 16 years. 16 years of new towns, new names, new lives I'd never let myself keep. But the second I looked into their eyes, Kane's storm, Axel's fire, I knew I was done running. Because they'd never let me go. Did you feel that? That moment when Jessica looked into their eyes and knew, she knew, her life would never be the same. That's just the beginning. Subscribe now because what happens next will break you and put you back together again. Comment below, who are you choosing, Kane's intensity or Axel's charm? Or are you greedy like me and want both? Jessica ran for 16 years. Don't make the same mistake. Hit that subscribe button and stay for the journey, because the best part, she's done running and we're just getting started. 24th town in 16 years. This one better not be as shit as the last. Jessica's hands gripped the steering wheel of her beat-up Ford as it rattled into Silverpine, the engine coughing like it was on its last breath. Mountains loomed on either side of the narrow road, their peaks disappearing into gray clouds that looked heavy enough to fall. The whole place had this oppressive, watching quality that made her skin prickle. She'd felt it the moment she crossed the town line, like she'd tripped some invisible wire. She shook off the feeling. Paranoia was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when she had $43 in her wallet and nowhere else to go. The town itself was exactly what she'd expected. One main street, a handful of shops that looked like they'd been frozen in time since the 70s, and more trees than people. A diner with peeling paint. A general store with a faded awning. And there at the end of the block, a hand-painted sign that read "Rooms for Rent," hanging from a 2-story building that had seen better days. Jessica parked, grabbed her duffel bag from the passenger seat. Everything she owned fit in one bag, and wasn't that just depressing, and headed inside. The landlord was waiting behind a desk that looked older than him, and that was saying something. He was Asian, maybe 70s, with silver hair and eyes that were too sharp for someone his age. The kind of eyes that saw things. New things. Jessica had dealt with his type before. Nosy bastards who asked too many questions. Help you? He asked, but he was already studying her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Saw the sign, need a room, short term. She kept her voice flat, bored. The less interested she seemed in staying, the less interested he'd be in her business. How short? Month to month, cash up front. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then he did that thing that always made her want to bolt. He stared. Just stared, his gaze crawling over her face like he was searching for something specific. You look familiar, he said slowly. Jessica's jaw tightened. She'd heard that before in 3 other towns. It never meant anything good. I've got one of those faces, the rent's $600, right? That's what the sign said. He didn't stop staring. Where you from? Everywhere, nowhere, does it matter? She pulled out a wad of crumpled bills and slapped them on the desk. $600, first month. I don't do background checks, references, or small talk. We got a deal or not? For a long moment, Mr. Chen, his nameplate said Chen, just watched her. Then slowly he slid a key across the desk. Cabin out back, number 7, quiet hours after 10, no guests. Won't be a problem. Jessica snatched the key and turned to leave before he could ask anything else. Miss. She paused, didn't turn around. Welcome to Silverpine, he said, and something in his tone made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Like it wasn't a welcome at all, more like a warning. The cabin was about what she'd expected, small, drafty, and smelling faintly of mildew and pine. One room with a kitchenette, a bathroom the size of a closet, and a bed that sagged in the middle. She'd stayed in worse. She dropped her duffel on the floor, pulled out the only other thing she owned, a silver necklace with a worn pendant, and hung it from the bedpost. The inscription had been rubbed away years ago. She didn't remember what it said. Didn't remember who gave it to her. It was the only thing she had from before the foster homes, before the running, before she learned that staying in one place too long meant people started asking questions she couldn't answer. Exhaustion hit her like a freight train. She collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and was asleep before she could overthink the creeping unease still crawling under her skin. The dream came fast and violent. She was running through a forest, branches tearing at her skin, her lungs burning. Something was chasing her, something big, something fast, something with eyes that glowed gold in the darkness. She could hear snarling behind her, getting closer, and she wanted to scream but couldn't find. Her voice, then cutting through the terror, a woman's voice, soft, desperate. "Stay hidden, baby, don't let them find you." Jessica tried to turn, tried to see the woman's face, but the dream was already fracturing. The glowing eyes were right behind her, and she was falling. She jerked awake, gasping, her heart slamming against her ribs. The cabin was dark except for a sliver of moonlight cutting through the window. She pressed a hand to her chest, willing her pulse to slow. Just a dream. Same damn dream she'd had since she was a kid, except it was getting worse, more vivid, more real. She reached for the necklace on the bedpost, clutching it in her fist. Her mother's voice, at least she thought it was her mother's. She didn't remember her face anymore. Didn't remember anything about her except that voice in the dream. Stay hidden from what? Jessica shoved the thought away, got up, and splashed cold water on her face. She didn't do trauma, didn't do therapy or feelings or digging into a past that was buried for a reason. She survived. That was enough. By morning, she'd pushed the nightmare back into the box where it belonged and headed into town. She needed a job, and fast. The diner was hiring, but the owner took one look at her and said they were looking for someone with more experience. Translation, someone who smiled more. The bar was her last shot. The timber house sat at the edge of town, all dark wood and dim lighting even in the middle of the day. The sign outside had a carved wolf that looked a little too realistic for comfort. Jessica pushed through the door and a bell chimed overhead. "Help you, hun." The woman behind the bar was older, maybe 50s, with kind eyes and graying blonde hair pulled into a bun. She looked like someone's mom. Jessica immediately distrusted her. "Heard you might be hiring." The woman's smile widened. "Maggie, I own the place. You got experience." 4 years bartending, 2 years waitressing before that. "I'm fast, I don't steal, and I show up on time." A reference is... No. Maggie's eyebrows lifted, but she didn't push. Instead, she looked at Jessica the same way Mr. Chen had, like she was trying to place her. "You sure you've never been here before?" Jessica kept her expression neutral. "Never, I'd remember a place this, rustic." Maggie tilted her head, and for just a second something flickered in her eyes, something sharp. Then it was gone, replaced by that warm smile again. "Well, you're hired. Start tomorrow, 6 to close. Tips are yours to keep." Jessica nodded, surprised it had been that easy. "Thanks." "Don't thank me yet. Friday nights get rough around here." Maggie gestured to the bar. "Why don't you stick around, get a feel for the place?" Jessica hesitated, then figured why not. She slid onto a stool and watched as Maggie moved around behind the bar, prepping glasses and wiping down surfaces. The place was quiet for now, just a couple of regulars nursing beers in the corner. She was starting to relax, big mistake when the door chimed again. Jessica glanced up out of habit and froze. 2 men walked in, identical. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and moving with the kind of confidence that came from knowing you owned every room you entered. One of them had a slight smirk playing at his lips. The other looked like he'd never smiled in his life. But it wasn't their looks that made her freeze. It was the way they stopped. Mid-step, both of them, staring directly at her like they'd just seen a ghost. The air in the bar shifted, got heavier, electric. Jessica's pulse kicked up for no reason she could explain, and suddenly she couldn't look away. Who the hell were they? And why did it feel like the ground had just disappeared from under her feet? Chapter 2. They were gorgeous. Annoyingly, unfairly gorgeous in that way that made Jessica want to punch something on principle. Tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out their leather jackets like they'd been tailored. Dark hair, sharp jawlines, and eyes that were an unsettling shade of amber that seemed to catch the light wrong. Identical down to the last detail, except for the energy. The one on the left had a grin playing at his lips like he knew a secret and was dying to tell it. Mischief practically radiated off him. The one on the right looked like he was contemplating murder and trying to decide if she was worth the prison sentence. All intensity and coiled violence. They sat at the bar in perfect sync, and Jessica realized she'd been staring for way too long. Get it together. They're just customers. Except they weren't looking at the menu or scanning the bar like normal people. They were looking at her. Both of them, unblinking, like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. Jessica grabbed a rag and made her way over, forcing her expression into something between bored and professional. "What can I get you?" The one, with the grin, leaned forward on his elbows, and good God, did he have to smell like that? Pine and leather and something wild that made her think of open spaces and running, and, "Your name for starters," he said, his voice smooth and playful. Jessica's jaw tightened. Of course, a flirt. She'd dealt with 1,000 of them. Not on the menu, beer or whiskey. His grin widened like her attitude delighted him. "I like you already." "Thrilled to hear it. Beer or whiskey?" "A whiskey, neat." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. "I'm Axel, by the way, and this is my brother, Kane." Jessica's gaze slid to the other twin, Kane, who still hadn't said a word. He was just staring. Not in a creepy way exactly, but in a way that made her feel exposed, like he could see straight through her walls and was cataloging every crack. "Whiskey," Kane finally said, his voice low and rough. A command, not a request. Jessica arched an eyebrow. Magic word. Axel laughed outright, but Kane's expression didn't change. If anything, his stare intensified. "Please," he said flatly, like the word physically hurt him. "Good boy," Jessica muttered, turning to grab the bottle. She felt their eyes on her the entire time, and it took every ounce of willpower not to snap at them to stop. The moment their drinks hit the bar, Axel reached for his, but Kane's hand shot out, gripping his brother's wrist. They locked eyes and something passed between them. A whole conversation in the span of 3 seconds, no words spoken. Jessica frowned. That was weird. Axel yanked his hand back, scowling. Kane's jaw clenched. Then they both turned to look at her again, and the intensity in their gazes made her stomach flip in a way she absolutely hated. "You two got a problem with me?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "Not at all, sweetheart," Axel said smoothly, that infuriating grin back in place. "Don't call me sweetheart, and stop staring before I charge you for the show." Axel's grin turned into a full smile. "What's the rate?" Kane shot him a look that could have melted steel, but Axel ignored him, his attention locked on Jessica like she was the most fascinating thing he'd seen in years. Jessica was about 2 seconds from kicking them both out when Maggie appeared at her elbow, drying a glass. "Boys," she said pleasantly, "didn't expect to see you two in here tonight." Maggie, Kane's tone was respectful but clipped, "Just passing through." Maggie's gaze flicked between the twins and Jessica, and something knowing glinted in her eyes. "Well, don't scare off my new hire on her first day." "Wouldn't dream of it." Axel said, but his eyes never left Jessica. Maggie patted Jessica's shoulder and moved away, leaving her alone with the two most unsettling men she'd ever met. They nursed their drinks in silence for a few minutes, or rather Axel nursed his. Kane just kept staring at her like she was a bomb about to go off. Finally, Jessica couldn't take it anymore. "Seriously, what is your problem?" Kane's knuckles whitened around his glass. "You shouldn't be here." "Excuse me." "He means Silverpine," Axel cut in quickly, shooting Kane another look. "It's not the friendliest town for outsiders." "I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can." Axel's tone was sincere, but there was something underneath it. Concern, fear. Jessica couldn't pin it down, but this place has a reputation. People go missing. "Then maybe you should leave," Jessica shot back. "Since it's so dangerous." Axel laughed again, but this time it sounded strained. Kane drained his whiskey in one swallow and stood abruptly. "We should go." "We just got here," Axel protested. "Now." Axel sighed but stood, pulling out his wallet and tossing down enough cash to cover both drinks and a tip that was way too generous. "See you around, Jess." "It's Jessica," she corrected coldly. "Jessica," he repeated like he was tasting her name. Then quieter, almost to himself. "Jessica." They left, and the moment the door closed behind them, the air in the bar felt lighter. Normal. Jessica exhaled, not realizing she'd been holding her breath. "Weird," she muttered, pocketing the cash, but she couldn't shake the feeling that had settled in her chest the moment they'd walked in. Something about them was wrong, or right, or both. She didn't know, and that pissed her off more than anything. Her shift ended at midnight. Maggie offered to drive her home, but Jessica declined. The cabin wasn't far, and the walk would clear her head. She took the shortcut through the woods, a narrow trail that cut between the trees and shaved 10 minutes off the trip. She was halfway through when she heard it, footsteps, not hers. Jessica stopped, her pulse spiking. "I know you're following me." Silence, then from the shadows ahead, Axel stepped into view, hands raised in mock surrender. "Just making sure you get home safe." "Are you kidding?" "Me right now?" Jessica's hands curled into fists. "I've been taking care of myself for 16 years. I don't need a babysitter." "Not babysitting," Axel said, his playful tone gone. "Protecting." "From what?" "From things you don't understand yet." "Try me." He opened his mouth, hesitated, then closed it again. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked unsure. "You wouldn't believe me." "Then why are you here?" "Because I can't stay away," he admitted, and the rawness in his voice caught her off guard. "Neither can Kane, and trust me, we've tried." Jessica took a step back. "You're insane." "Probably." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This town isn't safe after dark, Jessica. Not for you." "Then why are you out here?" She threw his logic back at him. "Go home." She turned and walked away, her heart pounding. She didn't look back, but she felt him watching her the entire way. When she finally reached the edge of the woods near her cabin, she heard voices behind her. Low, arguing. "This is a mistake," Kane's voice, sharp and cold. "Best mistake we'll ever make," Axel replied. Jessica didn't stop, didn't turn around. But as she locked herself inside the cabin and leaned against the door, one thought kept circling her mind. Why did they feel familiar? Like she'd known them her entire life, even though she'd only met them an hour ago. And why, despite every instinct screaming at her to run, did some deep, buried part of her want to stay? Chapter 3. The guy's hand was on her ass before Jessica even registered he'd moved. She was wiping down tables during the late-night shift at the Timber Howl, back turned to the bar when she felt it. A greasy palm squeezing hard enough to make her teeth grind. Drunk asshole, she dealt with 100 of them, but this time something snapped. Jessica spun, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The crack echoed through the bar like a gunshot. The man screamed, stumbling back, cradling his arm. "You broke it. You crazy bitch, you broke my wrist." Jessica stared at her hands, breathing hard. She hadn't meant to, she'd just reacted. But the strength behind that move, the ease with which she'd snapped bone like it was nothing, that wasn't normal. That wasn't her. The bar went silent. Every eye turned toward them. Maggie appeared at Jessica's side in an instant, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "He tripped," she announced to the room. Drunk idiot caught his hand on the table edge on his way down. "I didn't trip, she—" "You tripped," Maggie repeated, her voice taking on a tone that left no room for argument. "And now you're leaving. Before I call Sheriff Hayes and tell him you've been harassing my staff." The man opened his mouth, looked at Maggie's face, then thought better of it. He stumbled toward the door, still cradling his wrist, muttering curses under his breath. The second he was gone, Maggie turned to Jessica. "You okay?" "I don't know." Jessica's hands were shaking. "I didn't mean to, I just—" "Hey," Maggie's voice softened. He had it coming, but maybe take a break. "Go splash some water on your face." Jessica nodded and fled to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall. She pressed her palms against the cool metal walls and tried to breathe. What the hell was that? She'd been in fights before. Grew up in foster care, you learned to throw a punch or you didn't survive. But she'd never had that kind of strength. Never felt that kind of rage, white-hot and uncontrollable, like something inside her was clawing to get out. She looked at her hands again. They looked normal, felt normal, but they weren't. Over the next 3 days, things got worse. The twins were everywhere, like they'd appointed themselves her personal stalkers. Jessica left the bar after a shift. Axel was leaning against her truck, 2 coffees in hand. "Thought you could use this." She went to the diner for breakfast. Kane was in a booth by the window, watching her through the glass like a hawk. She walked to the general store for groceries. Both of them materialized on either side of her in the cereal aisle. "This is harassment," Jessica snapped, shoving past Axel. "I could get a restraining order." "You could try," Axel said cheerfully, falling into step beside her. "But I don't think it'd stick." "Why? Because you own the sheriff?" "Because you don't actually want us to leave." Jessica stopped dead and turned to glare at him. "Excuse me." "You heard me." His grin was infuriating. "If you really wanted us gone, you'd have thrown that coffee in my face by now. But you didn't, you drank it." "Because I was tired, not because I wanted your company." "Keep telling yourself that, sweetheart." "Stop calling me that." He laughed, and the sound shouldn't have made her stomach flip the way it did. Jessica cursed under her breath and stormed off, leaving him in the middle of the aisle. But he was right about one thing, and she hated it. She hadn't thrown the coffee in his face. She'd drunk it. And it had been exactly how she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream, which meant he'd been paying attention, watching her. The thought should have creeped her out. Instead, it made her feel something. Something she didn't want to name. Kane, on the other hand, never approached. He just watched. From his truck, from across the street, from the shadows, always there, always silent. And somehow that was worse than Axel's constant presence. Because when Kane looked at her, it felt like he was seeing something she couldn't, like he knew her better than she knew herself. It was driving her insane. The nightmares didn't help. Every night the same dream. Running through the forest, branches tearing at her skin, something chasing her. But now it was different. Now when she looked down, she didn't see hands. She saw paws, massive, clawed, covered in dark fur. She was the one running on 4 legs. The woman's voice still echoed through the trees. "Stay hidden, baby. Don't let them find you." But now there were other sounds. Snarling, howling, the snap of teeth. Jessica woke screaming, her sheets soaked with sweat. She reached for the lamp, flicked it on, and froze. Her sheets were shredded. Long, clean tears running through the fabric like something with claws had ripped them apart. She looked at her hands. Normal, no claws, no blood. But the evidence was right there. "What's happening to me?" She whispered to the empty room, no answer, just the sound of her heart pounding in her ears. By the fourth day, Jessica had had enough. She marched into Blackwood Auto. She'd asked around, found out the twins owned the place, and slammed the door open hard enough to rattle the frame. The shop was all grease and metal, tools hanging on the walls, the smell of oil thick in the air. Kane was under the hood of a truck, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in grease. Axel was at the workbench, grinning at something on his phone. Both of them looked up the second she walked in. "What the hell did you do to me?" Jessica demanded, storming toward them. Axel set his phone down, his grin widening. "Well, hello to you too. I'm serious. Ever since you two showed up, I've been losing my mind. So whatever sick game you're playing, it ends now. Stay away from me." Kane straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. His expression was unreadable. "We haven't done anything, yet." "Bullshit." Jessica's hands curled into fists. "I was fine before you got here. And now She stopped, not wanting to say it out loud, not wanting to admit how wrong everything felt. "Now you're what?" Axel asked, stepping closer. His tone had lost its playful edge. "Stronger, faster, angrier." Jessica's breath caught. "How did you—" "Because we know what you are," Kane said quietly. "Even if you don't." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Axel was right in front of her now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "You've been having the dreams, the rage, the strength. It's all coming back, Jess, and it's only going to get worse." "Stop," her voice cracked. "Just stop." "We can't do that," Axel said softly. "Why not?" As she looked between them, desperate. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" Kane and Axel exchanged a glance. Then, in perfect sync, they both said, "Because you're ours." Jessica laughed, sharp and bitter. "I don't belong to anyone. I've made damn sure of that my entire life." She turned to leave, but Kane moved faster than she thought possible, blocking the door. "You're in danger. You don't even know what you are. Get out of my way." "No." "Kane, you need to listen to us," he interrupted, his voice hard. "You're not human, Jessica. You never were, and the longer you deny it, the more dangerous you become. I'm done with this cryptic bullshit." Jessica shoved past him, or tried to. He didn't budge. "Move." "Jessica," Axel started, and then the pain hit, blinding, white-hot, like someone had driven a spike through her skull. Jessica gasped, stumbling, and Axel caught her before she hit the ground. Jess, talk to me." Her vision blurred. The shop dissolved around her, replaced by flashes of images she didn't recognize but somehow knew. The forest from her dreams. Her mother's face, younger, terrified, pressing something into her hands. Blood, so much blood, and voices screaming, howling. "Stay hidden, baby. Don't let them find you." Then everything went black. The last thing she felt was Axel's arms around her and Kane's voice, low and urgent. "We need to get her out of here. Now." Chapter 4. Jessica woke to the smell of cedar and something else. Something wild and clean, like a forest after rain. Her head was pounding, her mouth dry, and the bed beneath her was way too comfortable to be hers. Her eyes snapped open. This wasn't her cabin. The room was massive, all dark wood and exposed beams with floor-to-ceiling. Windows that looked out onto dense forest. The bed was king-sized, covered in thick blankets that smelled like pine and leather, and— oh God, she bolted upright, her heart racing. Where the hell was she? Jessica threw off the covers and swung her legs out of bed, only to realize she was still fully dressed. Small mercy. She made for the door, her legs unsteady, but before she could reach it, the handle turned. Axel walked in carrying a glass of water, and Jessica's hands curled into fists on instinct. "Did you kidnap me?" she demanded. "Good morning to you too." He held up the glass like a peace offering. "You collapsed at the shop. We brought you somewhere safe." "Safe? I don't even know where I am." "Our place." He set the water on the nightstand. "And before you freak out, you were unconscious. We weren't about to leave you on the garage floor. You could have taken me to a hospital." "And told them what exactly? That you had a supernatural meltdown?" Axel's tone was gentle, but there was an edge to it. "They can't help you, Jess. We can." "Stop calling me that." She backed up until she hit the wall. "I want to leave now." The door opened again and Kane stepped in. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept, his dark hair disheveled and his eyes shadowed. But when he looked at her, there was relief there, raw and unguarded. "We need to talk," he said. "No, I need to leave." "Jessica," Kane's voice was firm but not unkind. "Please just listen. And if you still want to go after, we'll drive you home ourselves." She wanted to argue, wanted to shove past them and run like she'd been running her whole life. But something in Kane's expression stopped her. He looked scared. Not of her, but for her. Jessica crossed her arms. "Fine, talk." Axel gestured to the bed. "You might want to sit." "I'm good here." "Suit yourself." He leaned against the dresser, arms folded, while Kane remained by the door like he was blocking her escape route. Which, let's be honest, he probably was. Kane took a breath. "Werewolves are real." Jessica blinked. "Excuse me." "Werewolves, shifters, whatever you want to call us, we exist. Packs exist. And Silverpine." He gestured vaguely toward the window. "This whole town is pack territory." For a long moment, Jessica just stared at him. Then she laughed, sharp, disbelieving. "Okay, you're insane, both of you." "We're not," Axel said quietly. "Werewolves? You expect me to believe you're werewolves?" "Want us to prove it?" Axel asked. "Sure, go ahead, sprout some fur." She was calling their bluff, had to be a bluff. Axel straightened, his expression turning serious. "You sure?" "Axel," Kane warned, "she needs to see it." Axel looked at Jessica, and something in his gaze made her pulse kick up. "Might want to step back." Jessica didn't move, couldn't move. She watched frozen as Axel rolled his shoulders and closed his eyes. And then it happened. The sound came first, a sickening crack of bones breaking and reforming. Jessica flinched, her stomach lurching. Axel's body convulsed, his back arching, and then fur erupted across his skin, black and thick. His face elongated into a muzzle, teeth sharpening, eyes glowing amber. In less than 10 seconds, Axel was gone. In his place stood a massive black wolf, easily the size of a bear, with intelligent eyes that locked onto hers. Jessica screamed. She grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and hurled it. The wolf dodged easily, and she scrambled backward into the corner, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Get away from me!" she shouted. "Get away!" "Jessica!" Kane's voice cut through her panic. He moved slowly, crouching down in front of her, hands raised, non-threatening. "We're not going to hurt you." He's a..." She couldn't get the words out. "He's still Axel," Kane said gently. "Same person, just different form." The wolf, Axel, made a low sound, almost like a whine, and stepped back. Then, just as quickly as he shifted back. Bones cracked again, fur receding, and within seconds, Axel was standing there, completely naked. Jessica slapped a hand over her eyes. "Oh my God, put on pants." "Didn't exactly have time to pack a change of clothes," Axel said, but she heard the rustle of fabric. "Okay, decent now." She peeked through her fingers. He'd pulled on sweatpants, thank God, though his chest was still bare. She forced her gaze to his face. "What do you want from me?" Her voice cracked, and she hated how small she sounded. Kane was still crouched in front of her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. To keep you alive? You're not human, Jessica, you're one of us. No, she shook her head. No, I'm not, You're a wolf, Kane interrupted. Your parents were wolves. Their pack was slaughtered by rogues 16 years ago when you were 8. Jessica's breath hitched. How do you? We found records, Axel said quietly. After you collapsed, we dug into your past. Your parents were part of the Crescent Moon Pack. They were good people, but rogues attacked, wiped out almost everyone. You were the only survivor. No, Jessica whispered. They died in a car accident. That's what I was told. They lied to protect you, Kane said. A witch, a pack ally, suppressed your wolf before you were placed with humans. She hid you, kept you safe. Jessica's hand went to her necklace, clutching it like a lifeline. Why would she do that? Because the rogues were hunting survivors, Axel said. If they'd found you, they would have killed you. And the suppression is breaking, Kane added. That's why you've been experiencing the symptoms. The strength, the rage, the dreams. Your wolf is waking up. Why now? Jessica's voice was barely audible. Why after all this time? Kane and Axel exchanged a glance. Then Axel said carefully, because you're near your mates. Jessica's head snapped up. My what? Mates, Kane said. It's a bond between wolves, rare but permanent. When you meet your mate, the connection is immediate, undeniable. And you're saying? She looked between them, her stomach dropping. No way. It means you're ours, Axel said softly, stepping closer. And we're yours forever. That's insane. Jessica pushed herself to her feet, her back still pressed against the wall. You can't just, people don't work like that. Wolves do, Kane said. I'm not a wolf. You are, Axel said. You just don't remember. Jessica's knees buckled, and Kane caught her before she could fall. He guided her to the bed, sitting her down gently. She buried her face in her hands, trying to process, trying to breathe. This is insane, she muttered. This is all insane. I know, Kane said quietly. He sat beside her, not touching, just close. But it's the truth. You can leave, Axel added. We won't stop you. But out there, when your wolf fully emerges, you'll be dangerous. To yourself and to others. You won't know how to control it. Jessica looked up at him. And if I stay? We help you through it, Axel said. Teach you control, help you shift safely. And we break every rule our pack has to keep you, Kane added, his voice hard. Jessica frowned. What does that mean? Suppressed wolves are forbidden, Kane said bluntly. Pack law states they're dangerous, unstable. If the elders find out what you are, they'll demand we turn you over to the council. And if you don't, we lose everything, Kane said. Our position, our pack, maybe our lives. Jessica stared at him. Then why risk it? Because the alternative is losing you, Axel said simply. And that's not an option. For a long moment, Jessica just sat there, her mind racing. Her parents, werewolves, a pack slaughtered, a witch who saved her. And these two men, these twins, who claimed she was theirs. It was too much, all of it. Her fingers brushed her necklace again, and she thought about the woman's voice in her dreams. Stay hidden, baby. I want to know who killed them, Jessica said finally, her voice steady. My parents, I want to know who did it. We'll find out, Kane promised. Together. Jessica met his eyes, then Axel's. They were both watching her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I'm not staying because of some bond, she said carefully. I'm staying for answers, that's it. Axel smiled, soft and knowing. Whatever you need to tell yourself, Jess. And stop calling me that, she muttered, but there was no heat behind it. Kane stood, offering her his hand. Come on, if you're staying, we've got a lot of work to do. Jessica looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, against every instinct screaming at her to run, she took it. Chapter 5. The first time Jessica sparred with Axel, she broke his nose. Good. He shouted, blood streaming down his face, grinning like a maniac. Again. They were deep in the woods behind the twins' cabin, the ground soft with pine needles, the air sharp with the scent of earth and sweat. Axel had barely given her time to change into workout clothes before dragging her out here at dawn. Channel the rage, he'd said. Don't fight it. Do with the fight, never. She drove her forehead into his already broken nose. Axel yelped and rolled off her, clutching his face. Okay, that one actually hurt. Jessica scrambled to her feet, her chest heaving. Don't pin me unless you're ready to lose. He laughed, actually laughed, blood dripping through his fingers. You're something else, you know that. I'm leaving. She turned and stormed toward the cabin, ignoring the way her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else entirely. Behind her, Axel called out, still laughing. Same time tomorrow, sweetheart. She didn't answer, but she showed up the next morning anyway. Kane's approach was different, quieter. Where Axel was all action and adrenaline, Kane taught her stillness. Your wolf isn't your enemy, he said one evening as they sat on the edge of the woods, the sun setting in shades of gold and crimson. She's the part of you that survived. The part that's been trying to protect you all these years. Jessica hugged her knees to her chest, staring out at the trees. What if I can't control her? You will. How do you know? Kane was silent for a moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, and the touch sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with fear. Because you won't have to do it alone, he said quietly. Jessica looked at him, really looked at him. In the fading light, his features were softer, less severe. He wasn't glaring or brooding or watching her like she was about to explode. He just looked, present, like he'd wait as long as it took for her to believe him. She didn't pull her hand away. I've been alone my whole life, she said softly. I don't know how to be anything else. Then we'll teach you. Something in her chest loosened, not much, but enough. By the end of the first week, Jessica started noticing things. When Axel was happy, she felt lighter. When Kane was tense, her shoulders knotted up. At first, she thought it was just her picking up on their moods. But then Axel went on patrol one night and Jessica felt it, a sharp, searing pain in her side that made her gasp and double over. What the hell? She hissed, clutching her ribs. Kane was across the room in an instant. What's wrong? I don't know, The pain spiked again, and she knew. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. Axel. Kane's expression darkened. Stay here. Like hell. Jessica was already moving, shoving past him and out the door. She didn't know where she was going, but her body did. Her feet carried her into the woods, her heart pounding, and there. Axel was leaning against a tree, pressing a hand to his side. Blood seeped through his fingers. What happened? Jessica was in front of him before she realized she'd moved, her hands hovering over the wound. Just a rogue, Axel said, wincing. I'm fine. You're not fine, you're bleeding. It's just a scratch. Scratches don't bleed like that. Her voice was rising, panic clawing at her throat. Why did she care this much? She barely knew him. And yet the thought of him hurt, of him in danger, made her feel like she was coming apart. Kane appeared behind her, assessing the wound with a practiced eye. You're an idiot. Love you too, brother. Axel tried to grin, but it came out more like a grimace. Come on, Kane said, slipping an arm under Axel's shoulders. Let's get you back. Jessica hovered, useless and furious and terrified all at once. She hated this. Hated feeling like her insides were tied to theirs. Hated that she couldn't seem to stop herself from caring. Later that night, after Axel's wound had been cleaned and bandaged, healing faster than any humans would, Jessica couldn't sleep. She wandered out onto the porch, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, and found Kane already there. He was leaning against the railing, staring out at the dark forest. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he'd heard her. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." She stood beside him, the silence stretching between them, then quietly, "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Risking everything for me. Your pack, your position, everything. I don't understand." Kane was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to face her, and the raw honesty in his eyes nearly undid her. "Because the moment I saw you," he said, his voice low and rough, "every plan I had for my life disappeared. The pack, the responsibilities, the future I thought I wanted, it all stopped mattering. It's just you now." Jessica's breath caught. "Oh, that's insane." "I know." He stepped closer and she didn't step back. "But it's the truth. You're it for me, Jessica, for both of us. And I'd burn the whole world down before I let anyone hurt you." She should have been scared. Should have told him he was crazy, that this bond or whatever it was didn't mean anything. But instead, she kissed him. It was impulsive, desperate, angry, at him, at herself, at the universe for throwing her into this mess. She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him down, and Kane responded immediately. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle but hungry, like he'd been holding himself back and finally couldn't anymore. The kiss was everything she didn't know she needed, fierce and consuming and terrifyingly real. When she finally pulled back, gasping for air, Kane's forehead rested against hers. "This doesn't mean," she started. "I know," he interrupted softly, "but it's a start." Jessica nodded, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't know if this was the bond or something real or both. But standing there with Kane's hands still cradling her face, she realized she didn't care. For the first time in 16 years, she wasn't alone. And for the first time in her life, she didn't want to run. Inside, through the window, Axel watched them with a soft smile. His side still ached, but seeing Jessica finally let her walls crack, even just a little, made it worth it. "About damn time," he murmured to himself. But outside in the shadows beyond the cabin, eyes watched. Glowing, calculating, the pack was closing in. Chapter 6. It happened during a training session. Jessica was working through a particularly difficult meditation with Kane when the rage hit, fast and consuming, like a wildfire in her veins. Her eyes flashed gold, claws erupting from her fingertips before she could stop them. She gasped, staring at her hands in horror. "No, no, no." "Breathe," Kane commanded, moving toward her. "Jessica, look at me, breathe through it." But it was too late. From the tree line she heard voices, footsteps. The patrol had seen her. 3 wolves emerged in human form, their expressions ranging from shock to outright fear. One of them, a younger man with sandy hair, took a step back, his hand already reaching for his phone. "Don't," Kane growled, his voice dropping into alpha command. "Stand down." But the damage was done. The patrol member was already speaking urgently into his phone, his eyes never leaving Jessica. "Sir, we have a situation. The Blackwood twins are harboring a suppressed wolf." "Yes, sir. Understood." He hung up and met Kane's furious glare. "Alpha Blackwood has called an emergency council meeting. You're both summoned, immediately." Jessica's claws retracted, leaving her hands shaking and human again. She felt sick. "Fuck," Axel muttered from behind her. She hadn't even heard him approach. The ride back to pack territory was silent and suffocating. Jessica sat in the back of the twins' truck, her arms wrapped around herself, feeling like she was being driven to her execution. Kane's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Axel stared out the window, his jaw clenched so tight she thought his teeth might crack. When they pulled up to a large cabin, bigger than the twins, clearly the pack's center of operations, Axel finally spoke. "We're not doing this." "We don't have a choice," Kane said quietly. "If we refuse, they'll come for her anyway. At least this way we can be there." "To do what? Watch them condemn her." "To protect her." Jessica leaned forward between the seats. "I can speak for myself." Both twins turned to look at her, and the pain in their eyes made her chest ache. "I know you can," Kane said, "but this council, they don't play fair." "Then I guess I'll have to be unfair right back." Axel's lips twitched despite everything. "That's my girl." The council chamber was exactly as intimidating as Jessica had imagined. A long wooden table sat in the center of the room, surrounded by high-backed chairs. 5 elders occupied those chairs, all of them older wolves with sharp eyes and sharper expressions. And at the head of the table sat a man who could only be Alpha Blackwood. He looked like an older, colder version of Kane. Same dark hair streaked with silver, same intense eyes, same aura of absolute authority. He watched Jessica enter with an expression that could have been carved from stone. "Sit," he commanded. Jessica remained standing. "I'm good here." One of the elders, a thin man with a hawkish face, leaned forward. "You will show respect in this chamber, girl." "Elder Marcus," Axel said tightly, "maybe you should show some respect first." "Axel," Kane warned under his breath. Alpha Blackwood raised a hand and the room fell silent. "Let us proceed." "Jessica Gibson, you are accused of being a suppressed wolf, a product of dark magic and a threat to this pack. How do you plead?" Jessica's hands curled into fists. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know what I was until a week ago." "Ignorance is not a defense," Elder Marcus spat. "Suppressed wolves are abominations. Your very existence violates the natural order." "The natural order?" Jessica's voice rose. "My parents were murdered. A witch saved my life by hiding what I was. If that makes me an abomination, then you're natural." "Order is bullshit." "Enough," Alpha Blackwood's voice cracked like a whip. "You will watch your tongue, or I will remove it." Kane stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Jessica. "Father, she's telling the truth. She's not dangerous. We've been training her." "You've been harboring her," the Alpha interrupted coldly, "in direct violation of pack law." "Because she's our mate," Axel said, his voice steady and defiant. A ripple of shock went through the elders. Even Alpha Blackwood's expression flickered, just for a moment before hardening again. "That changes nothing," he said. "The law is clear. Suppressed wolves are to be reported to the Council of Alphas for judgment. They will decide her fate." "No," Axel was on his feet. "We're not handing her over to those bureaucratic bastards." "Then you leave me no choice." Alpha Blackwood stood, his presence filling the room. "Kane, Axel. You will reject this female and report her to the council, or you will step down from your positions and be exiled from this pack. You have until sunrise to decide." "With all due respect, Alpha," Axel said, his voice dangerously quiet, "go to hell." Chaos erupted. Elders shouting, chairs scraping, voices overlapping in anger and shock. But through it all, Jessica noticed one thing. Kane hadn't said a word. He stood there, silent, his face unreadable. And when Alpha Blackwood turned to him, his expression was almost hopeful. "Kane," the Alpha said, his voice softer now, "you're my heir. The pack needs you. This girl is not worth destroying everything we've built. Choose." The room went silent. Every eye turned to Kane. And Kane, after what felt like an eternity, said quietly, "I need time." Jessica felt something crack inside her chest. "Kane," Axel hissed, "what the hell are you doing?" But Kane didn't look at him, didn't look at Jessica. He just stared at his father and repeated, "I need time." Alpha Blackwood nodded slowly. "You have until sunrise, don't waste it." The meeting was dismissed. Jessica walked out of that chamber feeling numb, her heart pounding in her ears. She barely registered the twins following her, barely heard Axel arguing with Kane in low, furious tones. When they got back to the cabin, Jessica finally turned on them. "You hesitated," she said, her voice shaking as she stared at Kane. "He asked you to choose and you hesitated." "Jessica, the pack is more important than me. I get it." "It's not that simple," Kane said, his voice strained. "Isn't it?" She laughed bitterly. "You have 300 wolves depending on you. I'm just one person. The math is pretty simple, Kane." "She's our mate, Kane." Axel exploded, rounding on his brother. "How the hell could you stand there and not?" "And I'm responsible for an entire pack." Kane shouted back, and it was the first time Jessica had heard him truly lose control. "If we do this, if we defy the council, break the laws, choose her over everything, we destroy everything our family built. The pack will fracture. Wolves will die. And for what?" "For her," Axel said, his voice breaking. "For us." Kane ran a hand through his hair, looking more tormented than Jessica had ever seen him. "I don't know if I can do that." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jessica felt something inside her snap. The bond, the connection, the fragile trust she'd been building, it all shattered. "Then don't," she said quietly. Before either of them could respond, the pain hit. Not emotional this time, physical. Her bones screaming, her skin burning, her wolf clawing its way to the surface. "Jessica!" Kane reached for her, but it was too late. Her body convulsed, and then she was shifting fully for the first time. It hurt. God, it hurt. Like being torn apart and rebuilt all at once. She heard herself screaming or maybe howling, and then... silence. Jessica stood on 4 legs, her vision sharper, her senses overwhelming. She looked down at silver paws, felt the weight of a tail, the power coiled in muscles she'd never had before. She was a wolf. A silver wolf with glowing gold eyes. And through the bond, through that connection she could no longer deny, she felt Kane's shock, his awe, his regret. "I won't be the reason you lose everything," she sent through the bond. Then she ran. She bolted into the forest, faster than she'd ever moved, the trees blurring around her. Behind her she heard them shift, heard their howls as they gave chase. But Jessica didn't stop. She couldn't, because if she stopped, she'd have to face the truth. She'd fallen for them, both of them, and one of them wasn't sure she was worth it. Chapter 7. Jessica ran until her lungs burned and her paws ached, until the forest gave way to a clearing and a frozen lake stretched out before her like a mirror. She stopped at the water's edge, her reflection staring back at her, a silver wolf with glowing gold eyes that looked as lost as she felt. She wasn't running anymore. She didn't have anywhere left to run to. The bond thrummed in her chest, pulling her back toward them, and she hated it. Hated that even now, even after everything, she couldn't escape what she felt. Behind her, branches snapped. 2 massive wolves emerged from the tree line, one black, one dark gray, both moving with predatory grace. Kane and Axel, of course they'd found her. The bond wouldn't let them lose her, even if she wanted to be lost. The black wolf, Axel, shifted first. He approached slowly, hands raised, naked and unbothered by the cold. "Jess, come back to us." Jessica shifted without thinking, and suddenly she was kneeling in the snow, naked and shivering and crying for reasons she couldn't name. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. "I don't know how to do this," she choked out. "I've never belonged anywhere. I don't know how to stay." Axel dropped to his knees in front of her, pulling off his jacket. Where the hell had that come from? And wrapping it around her shoulders. "Then we'll teach you," just like we taught you everything else. You don't understand. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I break things, I ruin things. Everyone I've ever cared about either leaves or dies, and I can't. I can't do that to you. You won't, Axel said firmly, cupping her face in his hands. Because we're not going anywhere. Behind him, the gray wolf shifted. Kane stood there, still in the shadows, and for a moment Jessica thought he'd come to say goodbye. To tell her she was right, that the pack mattered more, that duty came first, that she wasn't worth the cost. But then he stepped forward and she saw his face. He looked wrecked, devastated, like something inside him had shattered and he was still holding the pieces. Kane fell to his knees in front of her, right there in the snow beside Axel, and when he spoke, his voice broke. I'm sorry. God, Jessica, I'm so sorry. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I've spent my whole life doing what was right for everyone else, Kane continued, his hands shaking as he reached for her. Following the rules. Being the heir, the responsible one. And when my father asked me to choose, I hesitated because I thought I had to consider the pack, the consequences, everything I'd been taught. He looked up at her, and his eyes were wet. But you're what's right for me. Not the pack, not the title, you. Jessica's breath hitched. Kane, I don't care about any of it, he said fiercely. The pack, the position, my father's approval, I'll burn it all down if it means keeping you. Because without you, none of it matters. You mean that? Her voice was barely a whisper. You're my pack now, Kane said, his gaze moving between her and Axel. Both of you, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if I have to. Jessica stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for any hint of doubt. But there was none, just raw, desperate certainty. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Axel repeated, hope bleeding into his voice. Okay. She reached for both of them, pulling them close, and they held her between them like she was something precious, something worth fighting for. Let's go make your father's life hell. Axel laughed, the sound breaking with relief. That's my girl. They returned to Silverpine together just as the sun was rising, the three of them walking into pack territory like they owned it. Word had already spread, of course it had, and wolves were gathering in the clearing outside the main cabin, whispering, staring. Alpha Blackwood stood on the porch, flanked by the elders, his expression thunderous. You were supposed to give me your answer at sunrise. We're giving it now, Kane said, his voice carrying across the crowd. Axel and I formally reject your authority as Alpha. Gasps rippled through the pack, even the elders looked shocked. And we claim Jessica Gibson as our mate, Axel added, moving to stand beside Kane and Jessica. Publicly. In front of the pack and the gods. You would throw away everything for her. Alpha Blackwood's voice was cold, disbelieving. Your birthright, your family. Without hesitation, Kane said. She's our mate, our choice. And if you can't accept that, then this was never our pack to begin with. For a moment, the Alpha just stared at his sons, then his expression hardened. So be it. You are no longer members of this pack. You are exiled. And anyone who follows you will share your fate. I'll go. The voice came from the back of the crowd. A young wolf stepped forward, the sandy-haired patrol member from earlier. If they're starting a new pack, I'm in. Me too, another voice called. Then another, and another. Within minutes, nearly half the pack had stepped forward, mostly younger wolves, but some older ones too, and at the front of the group, smiling serenely, was Maggie. About time this pack had some new blood. She said, winking at Jessica. Alpha Blackwood's face went red with fury. Traitors, all of you. Or maybe, Kane said quietly. They're just tired of living under outdated laws and a leader who values tradition over his own sons. The Alpha had no response to that. If we're doing this, Axel said, turning to Jessica. "We're doing it right, the old way, in front of witnesses." Jessica's heart pounded as she realized what he meant. The claiming ceremony, public. Binding, permanent. "Are you sure?" she asked, searching both their faces. "We've never been more sure of anything," Kane said. The pack formed a circle around them, the newly declared supporters mixing with those who'd chosen to stay with Alpha Blackwood but wanted to witness the ceremony anyway. Jessica stood between the twins, her hands shaking, as Elder Maggie stepped forward to officiate. "The claiming bond is sacred," Maggie began, her voice carrying. "It is a promise witnessed by the pack and blessed by the moon. Axel Blackwood, speak your claim." Axel took Jessica's left hand, his grip steady and warm. "I claim you, Jessica Gibson, as my mate, my equal, my forever. In this life and everyone after, I am yours." "Kane Blackwood," Maggie prompted. Kane took her right hand, and the intensity in his gaze made her knees weak. "I claim you, Jessica Gibson, in this life and everyone after. You are mine and I am yours. Nothing will change that." "Jessica Gibson," Maggie said softly, "do you accept these claims?" Jessica looked between them, Axel with his wild grin and fierce loyalty, Kane with his steady strength and hard-won vulnerability. The two men who'd upended her entire world and somehow made her feel like she finally had a place in it. "I claim you both," she said, her voice breaking but strong. "I choose you, now and always." The words hung in the air for a moment, charged and sacred. Then Axel and Kane moved in sync, each pressing a kiss to the side of her neck where it met her shoulder. Jessica felt their teeth graze her skin, and then the bite. It wasn't painful. It was electric. A rush of sensation that shot through her entire body like lightning, connecting the three of them in a way that was more than physical. The bond snapped into place, complete and unbreakable, and suddenly Jessica could feel everything. Axel's fierce joy, Kane's overwhelming relief, their love raw and consuming and entirely hers. Golden light exploded around them, visible even in the dawn, and Jessica gasped as her wolf surged forward. Not violent this time. Not frightening, just powerful. She could feel it in her bones, in her blood, the strength of her alpha lineage, the legacy her parents had left her. The pack felt it too. She could see it in their faces, shock, awe, respect. She wasn't weak. Wasn't broken. She was extraordinary. When the light faded, Jessica stood between her mates, marked and claimed and whole for the first time in her life. Alpha Blackwood stared at them, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back into the cabin, the remaining elders following. But the wolves who'd chosen to follow Kane and Axel stayed. They crowded around, congratulations and laughter filling the air, and through it all, Jessica stood with her mates, anchored and safe and home. "What now?" she asked quietly as the celebration continued around them. Kane pulled her close, Axel's arm wrapping around them both. "Now we build something better, our pack, our rules, our family." "Sounds perfect," Jessica whispered. And for the first time in 16 years, she believed it. Chapter 8. 3 months later, Jessica woke to the sound of birds and the warmth of two bodies pressed against hers. Axel was sprawled on her left, one arm thrown across her waist, his face buried in her hair. Kane was on her right, more composed even in sleep, but his hand was intertwined with hers on top of the blankets. The morning light filtered through the curtains of their bedroom in the cabin they'd rebuilt together. And for a moment, Jessica just lay there, soaking it in. She'd never woken up feeling safe before, not once in 24 years. Now she couldn't imagine waking up any other way. Axel stirred, nuzzling closer. "Good morning, mate," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning, pest," Jessica said, but there was no heat behind it, just affection. She tried to sit up, but Kane's arm tightened around her, pulling her back down. 5 more minutes. You said that 20 minutes ago. And I'll say it again in 5 more minutes. Kane's voice was warm, lazy content. Stay. Jessica smiled despite herself and settled back between them. Outside, she could hear the sounds of their pack waking up, voices calling to each other, the clatter of breakfast being made in the communal kitchen, the laughter of the younger wolves. Their pack, small, made up of rogues and outcasts and wolves who'd chosen freedom over tradition, but it was theirs, and Jessica was co-alpha, equal authority with Kane and Axel. The pack respected her, not because she was their mate, but because she'd earned it. She'd fought for them, bled for them, stood beside them when other packs would have turned them away. She'd found her place. Finally, after breakfast, a chaotic affair involving at least 15 wolves crammed into the main cabin's kitchen, Jessica took a walk to the edge of their territory. There, beneath an old oak tree, stood a simple stone memorial. 2 names carved into the granite, Elena and Marcus Gibson, her parents. It had taken weeks of research, of digging through old pack records and questioning wolves who remembered the Crescent Moon pack, but they'd finally found the truth. The rogues who'd slaughtered her family were gone, wiped out years ago in a territory war. Justice had come even if Jessica hadn't been the one to deliver it. And her necklace, the silver pendant she'd carried for 16 years, had been enchanted. A protection spell woven by the witch who'd saved her, keyed to her mother's magic. It had kept her hidden, kept her safe, until she was strong enough to stand on her own. Jessica knelt in front of the memorial, running her fingers over her mother's name. "I wish I could remember you," she whispered. "What you looked like, what your voice sounded like outside of dreams. You carry them with you." She didn't startle. She'd felt Kane approach through the bond, that invisible thread that tied them together. He crouched beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "In your strength, your fire, the way you protect the people you love, that's them. That's their legacy." Jessica leaned into him, letting his presence ground her. "I hope they'd be proud." "They would be," Kane said with absolute certainty. "You're everything they fought to protect." Later that afternoon, Jessica stood in the training clearing, watching a group of younger wolves practice their forms. She'd started teaching them a few weeks ago, basic self-defense, control techniques, how to channel aggression without losing themselves to it. The same things Kane and Axel had taught her. One of the younger wolves, a girl named Riley who couldn't have been more than 16, executed a perfect takedown. Jessica grinned. "Nice, again, but faster this time." Riley beamed and reset her stance. From the edge of the clearing, Axel leaned against a tree, watching with undisguised pride. Kane joined him, crossing his arms. "She's incredible," Axel said quietly. "She always was," Kane replied. "She just needed to see it." Axel glanced at his brother, a soft smile playing at his lips. "We did good, didn't we? Choosing her." "We didn't choose her," Kane said. "The bond did, we just didn't screw it up." "Speak for yourself." "I was charming from day one." Kane snorted. "You got headbutted twice." "And she still fell for me. That's called charisma, brother." Kane rolled his eyes, but he was smiling. A real smile, the kind he reserved only for Axel and Jessica. The kind that said he was happy, truly, deeply happy. As the sun began to set, Jessica found herself back at the original cabin, the rundown rental where she'd first arrived in Silverpine. It belonged to them now officially. Mr. Chen had sold it to them for next to nothing, claiming he'd always known she'd end up staying. The cabin had been fixed up, reinforced, made into something permanent. It wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. It was home. Jessica stood on the porch, staring out at the forest as the sky turned shades of pink and gold. She heard footsteps behind her, two sets perfectly in sync, and then Axel and Kane were there, flanking her like they always did. Axel wrapped an arm around her waist. Kane's hand found hers. "What are you thinking about?" Axel asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Jessica smiled, the kind of smile that came from deep in her chest, where the bond lived and breathed. "That I spent 16 years running. I thought I was looking for where I came from, answers about my parents, my past, who I was supposed to be." She turned to look at them. These two men who'd upended her entire world and given her a new one. "Turns out I was looking for where I belonged." Kane squeezed her hand, and I found it. Her voice was steady, sure, right here with you two idiots. Axel laughed, the sound bright and full of joy. "Best compliment you've ever given us. Don't get used to it." Kane kissed her temple, his voice low and warm. "You are home, Jessica. You always will be." Jessica leaned into them, surrounded by their warmth and their love and the unbreakable bond that tied the three of them together. The forest stretched out before them, vast and wild and full of possibility. Their pack was behind them, safe and strong. And for the first time in her life, Jessica wasn't running towards something or away from something. She was just here. Present. "Home, I love you," she said quietly, the words still new but getting easier every time. "Both of you." "We know," Axel said, grinning against her hair. "We can feel it." "But it's nice to hear," Kane added, his voice soft. They stood there as the sun disappeared below the horizon, three souls bound together by fate and choice, and a love that had survived every obstacle thrown at it. And in the fading light, surrounded by the people she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back, Jessica finally understood what it meant to belong. She was home and she was never leaving. And that's how Jessica Gibson, the girl who spent 16 years running, finally found home. Between two alpha twins who loved her fiercely, in a pack she built from scratch, in a life she never thought she deserved. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor. Hit that like button if you believed in Jessica and her mates from the very beginning. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this, because I'm just getting started with the wolves of Silverpine. And drop a comment below. Tell me, did you cry? I won't judge. I cried writing it. Team Kane, Team Axel, or Team both? What was your favorite moment? Jessica found her forever. Maybe you just found your new favorite story. Welcome to the pack. I'll see you in the next one.